Okay, so today we are doing a kickoff workshop with Evari for a pedestrian scale lighting assessment project. And so to begin, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Nick Messler from Evari. So Nick, if you want to introduce yourself and take it away.
Thank you, EJ. Nick Messler with Evari Consulting, based out of Portland, Oregon. Evari is based in San Diego, California, and we've worked on citywide scale streetlight projects all over the country. Recently done the cities of Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, San Francisco, state of Hawaii, and just everywhere in between. We were doing a number of streetlight master plans, including here in the town of Somerset, focused on pedestrian scale lighting. Purpose of our meeting today is primarily to kind of introduce lighting and some of the technical concepts, and build a common language about lighting. Things like the word bright is rather ambiguous. Does that mean intensity? Does that mean the color temperature? Blue versus warm? Does that mean glare? That word means different things to different people. And we're really, the intention here is to build a vocabulary that when we talk about lighting, when we're communicating those ideas, we have a common ground on the technical nature without getting too deep in the weeds. But beyond that, I'm really here to listen. You all know the town of Somerset better than anybody. And it's incumbent on me to understand the history and gain some perspective on where the street lighting has been, where it is now, and what's the preference for where it goes, or within the scope of possibilities, something that you all will be happy with long after Evari's role in this project. And that's our goal for here today. Given the kind of small size here, I hope to make it a little bit more conversational and less of a lecture. So I'm really excited to engage with you all and just learn more about the street lighting and the issues you're seeing, characterized in your own words. That's the premise of our discussion today. It's exciting to be here speaking with all of you. Our focus when it comes to pedestrian lighting is obviously safety. That comes in many forms, and we'll talk about what that means, but also the way that's the economics make sense, and that you're installing and recommending something that is financially prudent. And it's something that's easily maintainable, will exist far beyond our role in this project. But to start us off, what I like to do at all these kinds of meetings is poll the audience here. Why do we provide street lighting?
Well, safety, as you mentioned, for
Safety.
cars and people in town, and very much convenience. I mean, there are a few residents who insist they can get by with flashlights when walking their dogs, but most people prefer to have street lights on when they're walking their dogs at night. So, and those are the main reasons.
Safety.
Safety.
Yeah.
Primarily public safety.
Public safety. All right.
Sure. I would say safety, but also getting to enjoy being outside in the elements of Somerset, even after it gets dark out.
Frequently people mention traffic safety, collisions, all manner of those things. Streetlights predate cars, so there's obviously a need that existed for them. Personal safety is a big one. When it comes to pedestrian scale lighting, it really achieves three different purposes. It's traffic safety, being seen by motorists. The second is personal safety and identifying friend or foe. If you're walking up to someone in the street, you can recognize who they are and if they're a threat or not. And then the third is identifying trip hazards, not tripping over a loose sidewalk panel or a roof that's sticking out.
Ice.
Nice.
Black ice for sure. Especially this time of year. But at its most basic form, it's to see. Maybe obvious. But the outcomes of that are manyfold, and the presentation here is to talk through some of those items, all the benefits of lighting, but also the hazards and things that we're anticipating to mitigate, particularly when it comes to pedestrian scale lighting. So we'll jump into it. As mentioned, there's a variety of different things that street lighting touches. We talked about some of these, personal safety and traffic safety. There's also things like community character. Many, cities and towns we worked with, certain neighborhoods, a sense of community pride, just based on the type of street light that's in their neighborhood. They know that's their neighborhood because of the fleur-de-lis, accents to the fixture. There's a sense of placemaking. There's the ability for wayfinding, particularly amongst people that are walking. You have lighting at every intersection. And here in town, it appears that you primarily have continuous lighting along each corridor rather than just at the intersections. Wayfinding lighting provides a means of navigation. I know where the next intersection is because I see that there's a light ahead. In addition to that, the benefits are things like public health, ability to walk around comfortably at night means you're more likely to do so, which is good for everybody. But there's also the negative aspects, whether that's light pollution, impacts to wildlife, bird migration, plants and animals. All of these things are things that are now have been widely documented and are at risk. Light pollution having gone up 9% year over year. So effectively every 8 years, we see a doubling in light pollution worldwide. And there's a lot of.
Can you explain what light pollution is?
Sure. Light pollution is light that is man-made and it is released up into the atmosphere, either direct lighting, like just pointing straight up, or it bounces off the ground. And it reduces our ability to see stars. Sky glow has been found. There's a work out very recently out of Villanova, I believe, finding that light pollution is extending growing seasons more so than climate changes. That has a negative impact to birds in particular. In the United States, it's estimated that 1 billion birds die every year, specifically due to light pollution. And across all exterior lighting sources and some interior lighting, it has an additive effect that reduces their ability to migrate effectively.
Do LED lights reduce light pollution by being direct, or?
It's a great question. There's a combination of things at play. LEDs have some benefit. There's also a negative aspect to them as well. And we'll talk about that in the presentation in detail. But effectively, the older fixtures that you saw, the HID, old school lights, they had this drop lens, came down, and now they're full flat cutoff. That drop lens created a lot of light pollution, direct upward lighting. Totally wasted light not going where it's intended. You do, however, with higher color temperatures, a lot of blue spectrum lighting in LEDs. That scatters in the atmosphere more so than warmer orange red lighting, and creates a bigger impact on pollution. It's a fourth power impact versus reducing the output is only a first order power impact. So the impact of color temperature is huge relative to what you can do to reducing amount of upward lighting. The other side of it as well, and this more dubious claim, is because you get such great energy savings from LEDs, you're able to cut your energy bill in half. Many places will just put out more lights because they have this extra money to play with. So
So you lose because putting in more lights, yes, got it. And presumably the like 3,000 Kelvin versus 4,000 Kelvin, 4,000 Kelvin's got a lot of blue in it, 3,000 Kelvin's got a lot less blue in it, right? So therefore,
Generally,
yeah, so you want 3,000 Kelvin, 2,700, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of debate on amongst the street lighting community in particular, whether it really matters. I think the jury's out. There's, I think, a stronger contingency that is pretty confident that blue light is bad. For example, in Maui County, Hawaii, they banned any outdoor lighting fixture that is beyond 2% blue spectrum light, which is a product that doesn't actually quite exist yet. And they're working through that right now. We've actually audited this county of Maui, Hawaii, so pretty familiar with that jurisdiction. And the intent is really for environmental purpose. They have sea turtles there that are very negatively affected by blue light sources. It matches the moon, and they get confused and think they're walking towards the moon out of the ocean, but it's actually towards the street. Obviously, we don't have sea turtles here, but there's other animals to consider, as well as our own personal human health. When we talk about intensity, there's often a misconception on what that word really means when you hear the word bright. And it, generally speaking, we're talking about intensity. And there's an example here. You can see that transition from our older high pressure sodium mercury vapor fixtures that had a yellow look to them to now LEDs. It's a wider look. When we talk about illumination, or it's the quantity of light that's measured, how much light is being emitted reaching the ground. We see this log scale here. We perceive light logarithmically, not linearly. So in the daytime, you're seeing 100,000 lux of light. The human eye is able to see down all the way to 0.1. The eye is an incredible instrument and able to see such a wide array of illumination. This tracks the phase of the moon. If someone did anybody have a chance to sit outside last night for the supermoon?
No.
It was really something. I was out there taking measurements with our photometer here. Halfway through, I realized it was a supermoon. So we had to calibrate all of our measurements down a little bit to account for the very, very bright moon we had last night.
All right, we didn't need streetlights last night, apparently.
I almost didn't. Yeah, I was like, what's the big deal? I can see fine.
Yeah.
Knowing that, it's obvious that based on the measurements that you're not quite meeting what's the recommended practice criteria for sidewalk lighting. So we're able to quantify that against the standards. We'll talk about the standards. This area in pink here, this is about the output of your average street light in lux. And that's the metric system. The United States have used foot candles. No, it's not a 1 foot candle. It's the candela emitted from light source over 1 square foot area. That's what that means. When we talk about illuminance, it's the amount of light that reaches the ground, something that you can measure. Luminance is how much light reaches the eye. So illuminance is criteria for pedestrian facilities, crosswalks, sidewalks. Luminance is the criteria for roadways. And obviously this is a pedestrian scale lighting study. Truth is, any roadway signed for 35 miles per hour or less per IS, which is the Illuminating Engineering Society standards organization, which I sit in. Any roadway sign 35 miles per hour or less doesn't need roadway lighting. I work with headlights do all work. So it's interesting having had an opportunity to walk around last night. You don't have any pedestrian scale lighting. Only have roadway lighting, but there's not a road sign for more than 25 miles per hour, maybe 30.
Can you say that that's for sure? You don't need the roadway lighting. What about based on age? Because you're talking young eyes, older eyes.
It's accounting for all those groups. The headlights are intended to do the work to identify someone or hazards in the roadway for motorists. That doesn't apply to pedestrians. Pedestrians have their own separate concerns and requirements. From a motorist perspective, roadway light. The headlights do all the work at those speeds. It doesn't do anything for identifying pedestrians very well.
You know, I would beg to differ. I know we're not gonna talk about roadway lighting here, but I would beg to differ that, you know, drive 270 or 495 at night and have the lights coming at you, and it'd be nice to have some lights above. It'd be easier to see than having the lights coming at my.
That's a high-speed road,
He's talking about low speeds, 35.
So, okay, low speeds, okay. All right,
35 miles per hour or less.
right.
I think it's actually, my personal opinion is probably closer to 30. I think looked at the data where that study comes from.
Cars have been known to drive faster than 35 miles an hour in a 35-mile limit, of course.
That's true. And that's a great point. Still, you know, that kind of presents, you know, interesting dichotomy here that, you know, we have a lot of roadway lighting. What can we do with what we have already to be more pedestrian focused?
Can we have both?
Oh, sure. I think that's the goal here.
Okay.
But so if you hear me talk about illuminance versus luminance, illuminance is how much light reaches the ground. That's really what we'll be talking about. We'll talk about uniformity. This is what it probably sounds like. It's the distribution of light that's on the ground, how uniform it is if you have light and dark spots versus very consistent. You'll hear me talk about bug ratings, BUG, backlight, uplight, and glare. Backlight is still light that goes off of the roadway. It's generally lighting pedestrian facilities, front yards. Some cities are very friendly to backlighting. It's generally considered nuisance lighting, like trespass, obtrusive light. Some cities are very friendly with that. For example, the city of Philadelphia, they have a policy that their street lightings tend to go from keyhole to keyhole. So that's not, doesn't stop at the property line, but it goes all the way up to the stoop and up to your keyholes for safety reasons. Uplight is the amount of light that's being emitted straight up into the skies, above 80 degrees. It's not doing anything, it's wasted light, wasted energy. And the third and final one is glare. Glare has become a particular problem amongst LEDs. It's something that I kind of didn't really even worry about until LED technology really hit the market back in 2010. Because it's such a small light source, it's difficult to look at. You may find yourself looking away, which is the term for that is called disability glare. That's so blinding to look away. Obviously, that's unsafe for a myriad of reasons. So something that we try to mitigate. BUG is a rating from 1 to 5, and every streetlight fixture has that rating attached to it. You don't necessarily want a 1 on all of those, very little backlight, uplight, and glare. You end up with these pencils of light and illuminating very much at all. So when it comes to bug ratings, you have to balance out these different criteria to get something that works for all these different needs. Specifically talking about glare, if you have astigmatism like I do, you might see this kind of starring effect from lights. Done poorly, LEDs can be very unattractive and a nuisance. From what I could tell, walking around and driving last night, you guys have a pretty good fixture already. For roadway lighting, when we're talking about pedestrian scale lighting, it's often lighting outward. And so it's easier to see that LED diode. Whereas roadway lighting is pointing down, so you don't look right into it as much. So it's something very important to consider when talking about pedestrian scale lighting. You might be familiar with CCT, color temperature. If you go to Home Depot and you buy light bulbs, you'll see warm white, soft white, or cool white. Those are different ratings expressed in Kelvin as a color temperature. Driving around today, I could tell that you have 5,000 Kelvin installed just about citywide.
It's 3,000.
Is it really?
It should be. I mean, it's Pepco. I never trust them, but it should be 3,000.
Okay. It could be the case. There's a 5 listed on all of the fixtures, which signals to me that it's 5,000 Kelvin, but maybe I'm misinterpreting that.
It's supposed to be 3,000 Kelvin. Let me put it that way. We can check, but
Okay. Gotcha. CCT is the kind of layman's term that is most often used. Truth is, it's kind of a terrible metric. Doesn't really express the amount of different spectrum of light. What I mean by that is, see the spectrum of light here. Daylight, this is the amount of different light colors that are emitted from violet through red. So you can see it's pretty consistent across the spectrum. The sun is emitting, an even level of these different colors. Incandescent was much warmer. On average, it appeared warmer, as well as other HID old school fixtures. Now with LEDs, you get this blue spike. This blue spike is what was very difficult to manage when the LED technology was first invented. It was invented in 1960 by the Japanese. When they first invented it, it looked so blue and purple and hard to look at that they had really no use for it for 50 years until they figured out how to mitigate that and get more color spectra in the total output, so that it was something that they could market. And that happened around 2010. So this blue spike is what makes lights appear bluer. When LEDs first came on the market, all we really had was 5,000 Kelvin. That's really all they could manufacture. You could get lower color temperature, but reduce the energy savings. So it wasn't as attractive as an option. Initially, they thought 5,000 Kelvin was the most environmentally friendly because it matched the moon. They thought that would be therefore the most natural. All it did was confuse a lot of animals. So slowly they started reducing that. The reduction in color temperature doesn't jeopardize the energy savings as it once did. Now we're even seeing all the way down to 1,700 Kelvin, which is really, really red orange, typically more in like trail and nature preserve settings. A lot of national parks are opting for that now, as an example. But a lot of this comes down to personal preference. And when it comes to safety in color temperature, color temperature has a relationship with another term, CRI. It's a color rendering index. How we're able to identify different colors. We have a low CRI. Old high pressure sodium fixtures, so really orange glow fixtures that we have for many years pre-LED. The color rendering index is basically 0. You couldn't make out colors at all. You could make out shapes, and that was just about it. LEDs now offer a significantly better color rendering index, and this is how we best perceive friend or foe when we're walking around. You'll see the detail on someone's face, if they were menacing or if they were friendly to a neighbor, how you're able to perceive color if you're looking for a car that's driving by, you want the red car. Under low CRI, you're not able to make that out. Under higher CRI conditions, you're able to make out color. LEDs now at low color temperature fixtures have a pretty good CRI. This was another issue early on, that if you wanted a lower color temperature, it looked nicer, you couldn't make out colors well. That's not really an issue anymore. The technology is significantly improved. Another thing we'll talk about here is optics, and I think I'm very curious about what was installed here in Somerset. My guess is probably a type 2, and basically that's the distribution of light. Some have this long, skinny output, whereas others have a longer throw across the street. So if you're out walking around, you might notice that on the side of the street light is brighter than the opposite side. And that could well be because of the distribution type of the fixture. If it had a longer throw, it might reach the other side of the street better. So if we talk about distribution type, this is what it's in reference to. We'll talk about shielding as a potential option in one of the more low-hanging fruit things to increase the intensity of the fixtures that we have already without creating all the nuisance glare and light trespass issues. So you can install this shield around the streetlight. It looks like a pie tin sometimes, upside down pie tin. And it limits the distribution of that light to be cut off. So instead of having the light upward, it's shielded to point downward in its intended direction. You can see a couple of different examples here. And I believe this graphic is from the Dark Skies Association. So these globe fixtures were very popular for a long time. You see some of them in DC in the National Mall. They're just still in light, 360 spherical shape. It's putting light everywhere, not down where it's intended to go. And now we're opting for more of these capped fixture types. You see a lot of these in DC as well. As an example, pointing light downward. Energy savings is another obvious component of this conversation. It's something that we're looking at. Identifying ways to improve the quality of lighting without a significant cost attached to it. We'll talk about dimming. In the early days, all you could really do was turn them off and on. Now we have things, photocells. That's what I've mostly seen around here. It seems that all the streetlights have photocells. So if it's dark enough, it notices it and it sends a signal to the streetlight to turn on. We now have connected systems. These are becoming more and more common in the United States. From a system control, you can manage and dim and turn on streetlights across the entire network. These first came out around the time of LEDs. You can't dim the old school HID fixtures the same way you can with LEDs.
Can you change the color temperature now?
You can't yet. No.
Not yet.
I'm
Coming soon.
begging the manufacturers to make it happen.
Right. Okay.
The drivers, the technology that underlies it, it is capable of doing that. There's no reason they can't. They just have to manufacture it, find a market for it. So we're hoping that in the next couple of years we start to see more of that. So this could be a good option for town of Somerset. 3 in the morning, I doubt you see a lot of people walking around. Probably mostly people out walking their dog in the evening, maybe a few joggers in the morning. Dimming the lights to not necessarily focus on where you need the light, but when you need it, would be a very good option. There's obviously a cost associated with it. Using the size of Somerset, it's something we have to do a deeper analysis on, but something that we're going to want to explore. Land use is something very important. We're looking at the city of Somerset here. It's pretty homogeneous. It's almost entirely residential. It does look like you have a historic district here. Is that right?
Right, and it's gold.
So there's not really much in terms of conversation here. It's all pretty much the same, but something that we like to look at. You want in your residential neighborhoods, quieter, sleepier. You don't necessarily need a lot of light. Maybe not, you don't want that either. You don't want to make it look necessarily inviting for people to be in that neighborhood that have no business being there. Versus your commercial districts where you have a lot of activity, you want to invite people to come and spend money. There's a difference in
Set the lights all fat, pick their time like 11 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night or whatever. Is there a local control that we can do that?
If with controls, yeah, it's certainly something to be done. This is something extremely popular in Europe now. They have a lot of energy shortages in Europe, so it's become very popular to just turn the lights off at night altogether. Almost as kind of a curfew type thing.
Those would be pedestrian lights, the regular street light can still be on. But
yeah, that's also a possibility. Having controls on only or dimming or if functionality to turn lights off only for certain ones. Definitely a possibility. Another thing is, we talked about wayfinding, having lights only at intersections where you have the greatest conflict. Just keeping those on, but turning off the mid block might be a strategy that's worthwhile. Something to explore. Traffic safety is a big topic. Let's cut off. A lot of the research that my firm Evari has done is expanding on this idea. We found that pedestrian fatalities in the United States are just ticking up and up every year. This graphic is a little old. It stops at 2022. 23, 24 has continued to go up. Interestingly enough, we see this trend, almost all of which occurring at night, but very little increase in the daytime, and adjusted for population is negligible. Obviously, something has changed about the nighttime environment. We turned this corner in 2010. You're seeing a consistent drop in fatalities year over year since the 70s. 2010, something changed, and now it's continued upward. At present, four out of 5 pedestrian fatalities occur at 80%. Evari's research that we have led is looking at that at an even deeper level, particularly at dusk. 1 in 4 of all pedestrian collisions occur during dusk. It's only a very short 60 to 90 minute period. So there's an outsized risk that's occurring during that very short time. We're trying to understand why that is. It's very new research that we put out. When it comes to pedestrian safety, one thing, if there's anything I leave you with as a concept, today's discussion is this concept, is that brighter lights will make dark spots appear darker. So if you have a very bright light shining a specific area, the area around it will appear darker because of the eye's ability to adjust to its environment. It'll make everything else appear much darker. So often the solution isn't necessarily more lighting, because it's going to make its surrounding environment appear darker and potentially, more frightening or scarier. Low levels of lighting, really the minimum recommended amount over a wider area is the best solution, instead of having a strong beam of light in a specific area and being negligent to its surrounding environment. Another important concept that we'll be evaluating is contrast, particularly as it relates to pedestrians. I'm sure you've noticed when you're driving around and you really see the LED headlights of oncoming traffic, it makes it difficult to see what's right in front of you. That's particularly true for a pedestrian. If you're backlit as a pedestrian, it gives you a silhouette effect where everything is lighter around you, and the object, the person, is very dark. It's hard to see. Effectively makes it invisible to the motorist. Providing this positive contrast, ensuring that the light hitting your body is in the direction of the eye of the driver, is an important concept. It's something that we'll be looking at each and every intersection here at Somerset.
Can I tell you one thing that I noticed the other night?
Sure.
I was driving up Dorset, going to turn right on Surrey,
Mhm.
and I guess there's no light there, so there was a car turning left, I'm turning right. I couldn't see the car turning left because he didn't have his lights on.
Yeah.
But that made me wonder about that intersection in general, because pedestrians don't usually have their lights on, that a lot of them are wearing black.
Yeah.
But it was very concerning. I was going slowly, so I saw this driver, whoa. And then I kept putting my lights on and off to let him know that. And finally, I rolled my window down and said, your lights aren't on. But that would have been a crash,
Yeah.
even though I was going very slowly.
Love to, yeah. Yeah, I'd have to imagine Dorset and Surrey is probably the busiest intersection in town.
It's one of them,
Yeah, the busiest is Dorset and Warwick.
'cause that's where the school is by Warwick. But that's something for us to look
Yeah.
at. That told me that corner is way too dark,
Yeah, I think my larger point here is that Dorset and Surrey, Dorset and Warwick, they don't necessarily they don't have the same need for lighting as other intersections throughout the city that have lower traffic.
Yeah, Dorset and Warwick has a good light. Dorset and Surrey does not, actually.
Yeah, but that's something for us to look at.
Warwick, I should say.
Mhm.
Looking at traffic safety, particularly here in Somerset, this is, I believe, the last 5 years of collisions in Montgomery County. Within the city limits, not much. It's mostly Wisconsin Avenue where the majority of collisions are, but I believe that's outside of city limits. I think. So, fortunately, not many collisions, but attention of safe traffic exchange. Being proactive. Something's going on over here.
Yeah, that's Friendship Heights. There's a lot more people there. I guess there are a lot more cars. That could be the reason.
Well, it's also Western Avenue is there and
Yeah.
lots of stuff happening on
Yeah.
Major thoroughfare.
Personal safety is another common discussed topic. My company, Evari, has looked very, very closely at this topic. The traffic safety was the first thing we really got involved in. My background is as a traffic engineer. I'm a traffic engineer by trade and got involved in street lighting. The science is pretty much settled. You can reduce car crashes and pedestrian fatalities by improving lighting at intersections. That's something that's stated by the Federal Highway Administration, and you can receive federal funding for street lighting improvements for that express purpose. And often in the work that Evari has done, you see after we've done a street lighting project, our crashes go down. We've seen a lot of claims that have been similarly made about reducing crime. We wanted to take a closer look at that, evaluating the relationship between street lighting and crime at a citywide scale. Often, most of the research that had been done previously was in the context of a very specific location where they might add street lighting or make it really bright, greater intensity of light. And they see crime go down. But often what ends up happening is this crime goes around the corner. It goes to the next block. It's displacement of crime rather than the reduction of crime. For a long time, streetlights in the United States were sold with the express thinking that it could reduce crime. This is a magazine page from, I believe, the 1960s. It's the Sylvania Gangbuster. They were selling streetlights with the express purpose that you could reduce crime. Evari has done a number of research efforts anywhere that we have a crime database and we're looking at doing a streetlight master plan. We evaluate this. Is there a relationship? And our findings are effectively that the amount of lighting doesn't have any impact on the incidence of crime occurring within the public right of way. What we have found, so what that means is you can have a lot of light, you can have very little light, you have no light at all, crime still occurs. What we have found is that in more walkable, dense cities, such as Somerset, an increase in pedestrian scale lighting has a reductive effect on crime. If you have more pedestrian scale lighting, you see fewer crimes. We evaluate that on at a citywide scale across the country. It doesn't pan out in non-walkable cities, so post-war Southern California, suburban neighborhoods that aren't walkable. We don't see that same trend. Here in the Northeast, where you have walkable communities, we do see that play out. This is just taking a look at that article a little closer. That's always amusing to me. This lamp fights juvenile delinquency. It's a heck of a claim. But also, it was only rated for 3 years of service, which is horrible. Imagine replacing lights every 3 years. So obviously, come a long way. This is looking at in-mix crime within the city. Really not much, just a few car break-ins, or at least that's what's been reported.
Our biggest crime is people stealing things from unlocked vehicles and cars. That's right. That's it.
Right.
And that's gone down since people have been locking their vehicles. That's amazing.
Amazing how that works.
Yeah.
That's right.
There's some research out there that increasing lighting might actually make it easier to steal from a car. You know, if you're parked under a street light, you can see what's in there versus if it's dark. But dubious claims there.
What about if the light, it's one of those like timed lights? You know, if someone walks up to a car in a driveway and the light comes on, isn't that more, wouldn't that be a deterrent?
I don't think so.
Mm.
I have one.
Yeah.
I hope it works.
Right.
But as far as street lighting goes, they were difficult to find a connection between the amount of light that's there and the reduction in crime. We talked about wayfinding already, and this is seeing where the next intersection is, navigation. Talk a little bit about environmental impacts. This is some very new, hot, exciting research that's come out of UCLA. I think Travis Longcore, we do a lot of work with them. These are a tenant curve. This is the activity level, different animals, different spectrum of light. We can see different animals have different, they respond differently to different wavelengths. We humans, primates are down here. So you see all these manners of, you know, kind of odd curves here. Interesting enough, humans have this perfect bell curve. For whatever reason, that's how we respond to light. So while we might be, you know, lighting for a specific purpose, we might be reducing blue light. That's going to help most animals, but some respond more to warmer light. So, you know, as a you know, smaller point of, you know, the work that we'll be doing here is taking a look at this. Is there any immediate endangered species in the Somerset area? I know there's a couple of creeks around here. There may not be. That's something we're going to take a look at. We did a project recently in a very urban area of Southern California. There's no animals at all, places like that. Maybe a couple of raccoons, but they're not endangered. So it wasn't as critical versus we're doing a project in Kenai, Alaska right now. It's all manner of endangered animals up there. So a more significant element of that project. So something we'll be looking at. So this is the effects of light pollution and dark skies. This is a light pollution map. This is the Washington, D.C. area. This blue dot here is where we are right now in Somerset. You can see that we're very much overshadowed by the impact of DC. You have to get out pretty far out into the Appalachian Mountains before it gets significantly dark. For this specific area, town of Somerset, we haven't seen a huge increase or decrease. We've pretty much leveled off over the last 20 years, which is great. It's, you know, a sign of significant improvement. Whereas the rest of the world is going up and up and up, more and more light pollution, reduced ability to see the stars, among other things. Things like light trespass, light shining on the window. Community character is one thing we touched on kind of briefly. And you know, for larger cities, this is something that we focus on, is how to characterize different neighborhoods by the specific elements of their community via lighting. These are all cities, as an example, that are very much characterized by their lighting. Now, a place like Somerset, it's a bedroom neighborhood, and it has a notably different need. But as was mentioned earlier, many cities we work with, you know, have a very particular style of streetlight that, you know, is meaningful to them, and it's a potential option for a place like Somerset if pedestrian scale lighting is, you know, something that's intended to be invested. There's elements of economic vitality, and that's not something that, you know, is necessarily present here in Somerset, but something we often look at. Ultimately, all these different things lend itself to a balance in design. How can we evaluate all these different competing priorities where we need some light? Some places we need more light, in others we need less, we don't need as much. And doing so in a way that's responsible. This is a joint statement that was released by the International Dark Sky Association and IS, Illuminating Engineering Society, about what good outdoor lighting really means. And you alluded to this earlier. LEDs are in many ways better because it reduces the amount of uplighting, wasted light. It's shining straight into the atmosphere. At the core, these are those 5 principles. It has to have an intended purpose, it needs to be useful. If it's not doing anything, there's no purpose, it doesn't need to be there. It's just wasting light, wasting energy, wasting money. It needs to be doing so in a way that's intentional, it's targeted. The lowest level that's necessary, overlighting is not necessarily good, particularly at intersections. If you have too much light, you can actually create a less safe environment. People so bright that you have to look away, or not focusing your eyes on the road. Too much light is a bad thing. The ability to control it, whether that's dimming, and then finally color. Color is 5th and last intentionally, because although it does have some effect when it comes to dark skies and light pollution, it is the least important. So there is some role, but these other things take precedence. These are the primary documents that we'll be looking at as it relates to the standards. What is an appropriate level of light? Looking specifically at the IS document, this one here, this is RP8, I sit on this committee. This is their pedestrian walkway criteria, 2 lux of light or 0.2 foot candle, so metric and standard. I was out last night walking around with our handy dandy photometer, taking measurements along sidewalks throughout the city. And generally speaking, if you're not meeting the criteria, we're looking for a relatively pretty low pedestrian activity. High pedestrian activity is like Times Square, is, you know, very, very high. And mid-range is, you know, most commercial districts. So in a neighborhood like this is where we're looking at. 2 lux of light. On average, we're seeing probably closer to 1 in most cases. So there's an obvious present need for, you know, more lighting. And of course, this is just a recommendation for what that average is. So you can definitely depart from what's the minimum recommended guidance, but this serving as a basis for all the research and studies that have been done for what the preferences for good lighting, this is going to serve as that.
Yeah, that's worse in the summertime, of course, when the leaves are in full. Well,
So we did take these measurements last night, no leaves, obviously, super moon, so it was pretty bright, we have to account for that. We will be coming back in June, I believe, to do a second measurement. Walking around today, even before the lights, we're taking pictures of all the fixtures. It's pretty obvious that once there's a full tree canopy, there's gonna be much less light reaching the ground. So that'll definitely impact our numbers here. But even with no leaves on the trees, it's particularly dark in several streets. So it's,
Is the only way to fix that to put lights on the ground?
there's a number of ways. We'll talk
We're
about
gonna
some.
get to that, okay.
We'll get there. There's probably half dozen to a dozen different options that we can look at. Some are less expensive. Maybe some are non-traditional, and then some are, you know, really, you know, high quality and very beautiful options. But you know, and we'll explore all of those. Right, so I was just mentioning, you know, we have roadway lighting here in Somerset. We do not have pedestrian scale lighting. So, you know, by, you know, one perspective, you could take, you know, as was mentioned earlier, if all the streets here in Somerset are signed for less than 35 miles per hour, which they are, we don't need any roadway lights. You could take out all the lights and still meet the design criteria for roadway. Wouldn't be meeting it for sidewalks. It's especially different set of criteria here. But you're not going to get there necessarily by changing the roadway lighting. Pedestrian scale lighting is the way to achieve that most effectively. So these maintenance concerns, things that we'll be looking at. Touch on that briefly. So this is some pictures I took last night walking around where the snow fell. You can see you get a pretty good sense here right under the streetlights, pretty bright, and then, you know, dimmer
Shade.
between the streetlights.
I also see the sky, meaning it was indeed a bright night, yes.
Yeah, this is from an
Who's that?
iPhone, so it's going to obscure it a little bit, but it certainly was bright. With the cloud cover too, and the brightness that is PC, there's a lot of light bouncing off the
Yeah.
clouds.
Yeah.
It's very obvious. We didn't do DC, we were gunning for that project.
Okay.
Is that Fallstone Avenue or Dorset Avenue?
I believe this is Dorset. Or,
That looks like Fallstone, I think.
it's
I'm so
it's
little.
either Dorset, Essex, or Fallston. I know it runs east west. I think it's Fallston. It's further south.
It's a little like Fallstone. That's right.
So you have this 20-watt LED that's installed. This looks like an Acuity brand fixture. Does anyone know? What's actually AEL?
I have the specs,
Autobahn?
I have
You
the
do?
specs, but not,
So this 05 is what I'm most curious about, so. Be curious to
They are
see.
supposed to be 3000K, are they?
I'll be checking on that.
So most streetlights, you'll see 20 LED. You won't see this 05, and you won't see this other super tiny print sticker with a QR code. So I'm not totally sure what this 05 is. It's not common that we see that. It could be that it's a 50-watt equivalent.
It is 50-watt equivalent.
You know that?
Yes.
So this is your old fixture. This is Google Street View from 2017. The blue sticker means it is mercury vapor. I saw out there you have, as was mentioned, there's 3 lone high pressure sodium fixtures still out there. There's one on S6 or it's on
Sorry.
Surrey, south of Essex or north of Essex. That has a yellow sticker, high pressure sodium. And it says 07 on it. It's a 70 watt.
Mhm.
So that could be what it means. I've never seen that before. It's
We ordered 50-watt equivalents at 3000K. I hope we've got those on.
It very well could be. Once I take a look at the specs, we'll know for sure. But this helps us give a very good basis of where we're going to take this and understanding what we're starting with. Evidently, you have these LEDs at some point. So again, from Google Street View. It looks like during the conversion, they just started fresh and made everything consistent.
Yeah, we had LEDs on Dorset for years. It was supposed to be a 6-month pilot that lasted 10 years. Yeah.
We're
Non-com.
slowly
Right.
I am curious about the distribution type here. If you're not lighting up the sidewalks well, it could be that the distribution type maybe is a mismatch and something that would phase in over time. What the color temperature is, if you're interested in. The potential for different set of optics and shielding. It occurred to me walking around last night that a non-traditional, unconventional fix, maybe just to turn the mast arms around 180 degrees. Don't need road lighting, but you do need pedestrian lighting. You just have them face towards the sidewalk rather than the roadway. Potential solution, not very orthodox perhaps, but that'll work. And as long as you have these far side shields, it wouldn't be shining directly at people's eyes.
Do we, even though we got those lights from Petco, we can do what we want?
That's my next question. I mean, the issue is if they can be solar, which means that we don't have to go through Petco if they are solar.
Certainly an option. Since all of your fixtures are on wood utility poles, they're much taller than the light itself. I believe it would exceed the height of the tree canopy here. In most instances, if you put the panel, the solar panel at the top of the pole, high above the
Right.
tree canopy. The only thing I'll say is that most utilities have strict requirements about what you can install at different heights. Streetlights almost nationwide are installed at 28 feet because of different heights reserved for telecom, energy, fiber, and other things. So they might not be too keen on putting a solar panel way up high.
And the other thing is extending it out over the road, presumably away from the kind of getting it back.
Oh, that's interesting. Possibility. The only risk would be any wind loads. If there's a big storm that comes through, I know you get a hurricane from time to time. It'll act as a sail, take off the panel or take down the whole pole. What will really depend on is how deep the pilings of that wood pole are and the geotechnical items. If it's capable of withstanding that wind load and won't tip over, then yeah. But it's contingent upon that, which is a big mistake.
Okay.
You
So
talking about
speak
putting
for it later.
solar panels on all the lights? Or just some
Well,
of them?
They would be needed for each light, yeah.
That's a lot of lights.
Well, potentially only where it's truly necessary to install additional pedestrian scale lighting. In some places, you are meeting the recommended, not every. So, wherever an addition is, recommended, that's an option, to just put in a solar light for just that.
Do you have a sense of how many lights we need?
At present, you have about 200 lights on your system.
Mhm.
At this point, it's pretty early on to just give you a number,
Okay, you don't have, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, yeah.
but I mean, my kind of knee-jerk reaction is that you would want additional lighting at intersections. That's where you have the greatest number of conflicts. It serves a wayfinding purpose, navigation. It's the kind of most obvious low-hanging fruit. You probably have about a dozen large intersections here. Those are the places I would start. I haven't had a chance to look too close at the pool area, or the area immediate to the school. Those are other more high priority locations where you have more pedestrian activity, particularly children walking. There's a higher need because of the risk.
Yeah, the other block is the, from Wisconsin to Warwick on Dorset, because that tends to be fairly heavy pedestrian traffic. People coming back from Metro, walking back or from Friendship Heights, walking that way, plus other people walking their dogs. That tends to have more traffic on it.
Which area did you say that was?
Dorset Avenue between Wisconsin and Warwick.
Right here, yeah. Yeah, I agree, this is a busy area.
But people also come in off the trail on Fallstone by the pool,
Yeah, they do.
and then walk up,
But it's more to come up Wisconsin and then cut off
Right,
Dorset.
right.
And
Just looking, so all these yellow points here indicate that there's a street right there. Pink is the mast on which the light is facing. There's some more obvious gaps, like you probably could go for a street light right here. This is a pretty significant gap in lighting. I almost guarantee there's no light reaching the ground.
there are several gaps in town.
Yeah, what street was that?
This is Warwick, just north of Fallstone.
Yeah, there's a Fallstone gap as well on the.
There's a
block.
Surrey,
Yeah, between Surrey and
Dorset and Fallstone.
Yeah.
It's pretty dark and pretty scary.
So this one right here, this is one of your lone high pressure sodium lights. What's also interesting, and something I should mention, and probably why we're in this whole situation to some extent, is high pressure sodium lights have this big blob of light indiscriminately, and a lot of backlight. These LEDs are this thinner strip, just like a roadway. So if you're noticing putting all these LEDs and it feels darker on the sidewalks, it's probably likely due to that reason that optics are better. It's not lighting the sidewalk as well. So in this segment of the roadway here on Surrey, you have this one lone high pressure sodium. Right underneath it on the sidewalk is pretty well lit. Probably a need for a second light along this roadway.
Is that between Fallstone and Dorset?
This Fallstone and Essex right here.
Fallstone and Essex?
Essex and Dorset, pretty good. There is a lot of, I was just out there, there's a lot of tree coverage right here. So I can imagine it getting pretty dark due to that reason.
Mhm.
And then Surrey just has this one lone light. That's hypersodium, it's very old. So its true output is probably half of when it was first installed. So it's like a 10-watt LED, which would be what you put in your house. If you can imagine that.
Yeah.
It's not really doing much at all. So yeah, I mean, just looking at the map, you start to make out where all of those gaps are pretty quickly. And where, there's a potential need for filling in those gaps if there's a desire for continuous lighting. One other kind of, perspective here is something that's also now available. This is something that was somewhat pioneered in the city of Philadelphia. We just helped them convert to LED. I believe they're done converting or just about to finish converting. They converted 130,000 lights to LED. And this is your more traditional beam of light. The option is just to rotate the panel so that it's light intentionally backlighted. This is what that LED panel looks like, and it's just a matter of turning it around. They kind of pioneered that concept. Philly is a lot of one lane, one way roadways. It's low speed, you don't need a lot of lighting. They have very wide pedestrian walkways, sidewalks, a lot of people. So it was very useful to install a light that was just rotated backwards effectively.
Where is that panel on the pole?
This can't, so your lights look a little different. So you have this one big old diode here, and that's a QD Autobahn special. One big bulb putting out light versus most other manufacturers have this panel of smaller diodes. There's many of these, and they're all installed in a very specific way to get that different distribution pattern. One light's going down, one light's going a slightly different angle. They all have they're installed to create a specific beam pattern. You can even control that to be any number of shapes. This light, you don't have that same opportunity, other than just rotating it. It's going to generally have this pattern of light, shooting light across the roadway. So if you just turn it around, it would be a lot backlighting the sidewalk, or at least you'd have more light there. This is, again, a less traditional option, but a potential kind of easy, low-hanging fruit solution.
When you say turn it around, is that the arm you're turning?
So that is one option. Just rotate the arm on E. Or you just flip that panel, so the arm stays in the same orientation, but you turn the light bulb around effectively.
Is that thing, that what's it called, you had something on one of the other lights, it's like a, I'm not being very specific here, am I? Yeah, that hat, whatever visor looks like.
This is the shield, so
Shield.
this, if you rotate the mask on maybe, you probably need these shields because they're just spilling a ton of light into people's houses.
Mhm.
You just flip the optic, it's not throwing as far. If this was
They built that way so you can change it easily?
no, they have to talk to the manufacturer, but they'll build them. They did it for Philly.
So we'd have to get new lights.
Potentially, if there's something that gets phased in, or it's something that's done in addition to what we have now. New lights, or, and then, the kind of more expensive, obvious option of pedestrian scale lighting is things like this. A pedestrian scale light like this it's obviously very beautiful. It comes in many shapes and varieties, but the cost is effectively 10 times more than your traditional street light. One of these guys, especially when it's mounted on a wood pole, the cost comes down even more. The most expensive part of the street light is the pole itself, foundation, running the electrical under the ground. If you're running it on a wood pole, it's relatively cheap. You just tap right in there.
How much does solar reduce the cost? Because you've got no wires then, obviously.
There's a greater upfront cost that you strictly make back over time. There's nice solar panels on your house. I'd say even 5 years ago, the economics for solar panels didn't really work. The technology has improved and the costs have come down significantly, and now it's starting to make sense more and more. So definitely something worth exploring. My company does analyses on a citywide scale that evaluates topography, building shadowing, tree canopy, pole heights to evaluate where is the best candidates for solar panel lighting. Effectively, you throw a dart at the map, it'll tell you exactly what the size of the panel is for that one location. We do that on citywide scale, so or anywhere.
Okay.
So something that could be explored. Your tree canopy is gonna make it pretty difficult though. And, I believe you have it's kind of a tree certification.
Yeah, we do the Tree City.
Yeah. In Philadelphia, we found I believe it was 7,000 trees they had to trim in order to get their LED conversion, which would amount to a 70-year backlog for their arborists. So they had to get some extra funding. They weren't particularly happy about it, but it was the nature of the beast, you couldn't avoid it. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to do some pretty serious cutting to cut that back and maintain it over time. It's difficult to predict how a tree's gonna grow.
We did that. We really trimmed back.
We did
The lights.
do some trimming for the
Yeah.
LED lights, yes, we did.
Because there were some streets, I know I walked them at night. I said, if the leaves were in the way, we'd be fine.
Yeah, I mean, our arborist was actually listening to the talk we went off after that, but we do have an arborist in town and guides us on trees.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's the bulk of my presentation here, but I know we have plenty of time left. Really wanted to use this as an opportunity to answer questions or, go back to anything specific that there, might be a need for more insight on.
All right, obviously I need to check to make sure that we do actually have some hay on our lights.
What's that? What'd you
They
say?
are 50 watt, which,
Oh.
and they are supposed to be, they are.
Well, we'll assume so. They look like they were.
Yeah,
They look
okay.
bluer.
All right, timing, so you were continuing to study the town in June, right? And so you'll give some kind of report into us after that?
That's right. Yeah, we got our first set of field measurements with our photometer. We're gonna complete the inventory of your system this weekend. My sister lives just on the other side of Rock Creek Park, so I've enlisted her to give me a hand.
All right, okay.
We have a bunch of analyses to do. The kind of next major step, and this is Evari's real bread and butter, and I'll show you an example of another one that we're doing right now, is building an illumination model. So you can throw a dart anywhere on the map, and it'll tell you how much light is reaching the ground. And you can see it displayed here. Orange, red is more light, blue is less, and then beyond that, there's no light being provided from the streetlights.
Don't you almost have to do that twice? Once in the summer and once in the winter?
Something we'll do is we'll identify where the tree canopy is and just overlay that. Just basically cut out where that is and say that there's
Okay.
a reduction in light being provided by some, but definitely less. It will be calibrated to our field measurements. Quickly you'll start to understand where there's light beyond just this kind of binary yes, no, is there a pole or not? But just knowing that there's a pole doesn't tell you much else about the quality of that light, how much light is reaching your eye. That's what these models intend to do. This is something that Evari has developed. This is Kenai, Alaska. We're doing a streetlight plan for them right now. You can see quickly, there's all these gaps in their lighting. There's this intersection here, no light at all. We're going to provide something identical to this. Let's see, Somerset. And it's going to be very obvious where those gaps are, where to start filling them in. We can take this a step further and let's see if I can find this easily. Look at this in specific contexts. We can look at this, for example, specifically in the area of sidewalks or crosswalks or bike lanes. This is Santa Ana, California. We're doing a streetlight master plan for them. Turn all these layers off. So again, you can see that illumination layer here. This is how much light is specifically within the crosswalk. Oops. Did something I didn't like. So orange, green, yellow, those are expected values. It's what we didn't intend to see. The amount of illumination being expressed here. Blue, very little light, it's below the standard. Gray, no light at all. If we saw anything in red, which there's some here in Santa Ana, probably too much light. So we'll know via the modeling that we did, which sidewalks don't have enough light.
And you're telling us that there's definitely some without enough light because just of your first run observation.
I mean, it's, I can take a walk through there, take some measurements, I know exactly where it is meeting standards, where it isn't. But we want to do this in a very methodical nature, instead of shoot from the hip.
Right. And I mean, would you look at solar to make sure, to see if it's possible, is what it comes down to. Working with Pepco is a challenge, it's why I'm saying that, it is a challenge. And if there is a way of doing it cleanly, without Pepco, it would be desirable. If it is a higher upfront cost and we do get lower costs using it, that's probably okay with the town too.
I'd be curious to look at your electric bill. And how they do break down the costs. There's a pole rental fee, putting your own lights up, and the panels associated with that. And at some point, there's a break-even point where it actually is more cost-effective to have the utility manage it. Those are the headaches that commonly come along with that.
Yeah, well,
Nowhere's immune from that.
all right, we managed to do well with them putting our LED lights on, but the reason why we did well was because the Public Service Commission, which supervises things, had basically given them a telling off because we weren't putting in LED lights. So they were under the gun to do them. And we said, we've got the money to do them. And they said, yes, right. So that was the only reason they were motivated. That was it. Otherwise, it's a little panel.
Right. Understood. So, I guess the question I have is that, just to confirm, I suppose, is that, is the city the owner of these lights, or is it the utility?
Utility owns the street lights.
And they're just providing it at your request?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're paying them obviously, but
We paid for the lights.
yeah, we paid for the installation of the lights. We didn't pay for the lights. We paid for the installation. They are Pepco's lights.
And then you pay a monthly bill for electricity.
Yeah, yes.
But if you said, I'll take them all out, would they go ahead and do that?
For a fee, yes.
Okay. I ask every city and utility operates differently, and some would say, no, we're not getting them out for whatever reason. Not everywhere is necessarily reasonable from that perspective. In addition to that, there's other, pressure from other municipalities at a larger level, whether it's the county or the state that wants some kind of level of minimum lighting. But if that's the case here, that definitely makes things easier to just go and say, this is what we want to do, and they'll do it for a fee, obviously, but it sounds like you have there's a working relationship with the.
Yeah, well, we do have a working relationship. There is a contact, Alberto, whatever his name is the contact. So we can talk to him.
Yeah, there are some state laws with respect to municipalities' rights to, for example, request that Pepco sell the lights to the municipality. Another nearby jurisdiction started down that road and found it very difficult to negotiate because Pepco doesn't want to lose that revenue. So it might be a complicated process, but option is there.
Yeah,
He was not.
I spoke at a utility conference last year down in Florida. I started my presentation just as I did here today. Why do we provide street lighting? Someone in the audience said, to make money. Utilities have, since they're quasi monopolies, they have limited ways in which they're allowed to make money. Street lighting is one.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean,
so that.
there are many ways they could make money out of LED lights if they wanted to, but they are not showing any interest in doing it, all I can say.
Yep, that's nationwide.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. But still, it sounds like, of the menu of options here, there's, this doesn't close the door on that. Other cities we've worked with, they can't even get a hold of the utility. They want something done, they tell them to beat it. So this is a good start point.
You know, but I've got a contact is a good thing. All right, okay. All right, thank you very much.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Maybe from the, our Zoom attendees?
I think it's only our town attorney,
Is it only Ron that's
Yeah.
on?
I think
but it's
we're-
all being recorded, so it will be available to the other council members.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
Thank
I've been
you.
listening in. Very interesting.
Thank you so much. I do have my contact information here. Please feel free, give me, send me an email. And, you know, if something comes to mind a month from now, or you see something that caught your eye, love to hear about it. It's gonna set me up for success, giving something that is useful to you all.
No, I learned a lot. Thank you. Really was very useful.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation.
All right.